Gaming has always been a frontier for emerging technologies, and with AI, it's leveling up again. This next group of innovators is set to explore how AI is transforming gameplay, monetization, and the business of entertainment. Please welcome Sky Mavis, co-founder and CEO, Trung Nguyen, Play Ventures general partner, Felicia Ko, GOAT Gaming founder and CEO, Simon Davis, and Fortune Asia editor, Nicholas Gordon.
All right, very excited to talk about AI in gaming, a product that I spend far too much of my free time enjoying. Felicia, I want to start with you, and maybe to kind of give us a sense of what the video game industry is like in 2025. There's obviously highs, global revenue is still growing, there's a new console this year, but there's also not a lot of other great news. Layoffs are high. I think there was a GDC survey that said 1 in 10 employees have gone through a layoff. So just give us a sense, what is the state of video gaming in 2025?
So I think overall, if you look at the top line numbers, I think you're right. We still have global gaming revenues reaching all-time highs. I think we're nearing about $200 billion right now in annual revenue from gaming. That's bigger than still movies, TVs, music combined. There have been challenges in gaming in the last few years, not gonna lie. Most of our gaming revenue is still, I think, 49% driven by mobile. And that came out of the emergence of the App Store in 2008, free-to-play gaming. That still drives majority of our revenue. But that was also like nearing 2 decades ago. So I think where we are right now is we're seeing a gaming industry and a consumer app industry as well that is going through a period of transition, adjusting, right-sizing. The costs of development, especially of certain titles, when you look at PC, console, is in the $100 million to, if you're GTA, Grand Theft Auto, that's $2 billion to produce, which is insane, essentially. The costs have completely bloated. Retail prices have not. So there is a huge mismatch, especially when you look at the broader capital markets. We know it's not zero interest rates anymore. So, something has to give. Some people will say AI is scary, AI is stealing jobs, and this is probably an unpopular opinion, but as a VC, I see it as presenting an exciting opportunity to disrupt the unit economics that have not been working for certain sectors in gaming, to offer new ways of distribution, new ways for players and consumers to engage in gaming. Maybe it's not gonna look like, the old days where we all download a game on the mobile app store and play on our mobile.
And we have 2 great examples of developers using AI in their games right now, Trung and Simon. Trung, I want to start with you. How are you using Gen AI in your games right now, and what do you hope to use it for in the future?
So we are not only a game builder, but also an ecosystem builder. So we work with game studios across the world. So I will not only use our own examples, but also other examples as well in our ecosystem. So to us, we are experimenting with different forms of generative AI. Last year, we actually launched an agent, but based on one of our co-founders. He's a very humorous guy, and always fun. And he connects deeply with the community. But what's even more intriguing here is that we was able to basically contain his personalities into the agents so that we can interact with the communities, breathlessly. Instead of having someone who needs to always be there and then answer communities' questions, we have the agent who interact, I could say, at the same level of personalities, but at the same time also bring some more angles and knowledge into the table. Because we always function at the edge of technology, we also have seen other game studios that experiment with generative AI in different ways. Taking one of our partners, for example, Pixels, they have a feature inside their game, risk to earn. So people actually go through a simulated dating game. They enter a castle, and then there are 6 NPCs with different personalities, different type of dialogues that they need to go through and convince them and then earn their trust and their heart. So something like that is very interesting to see, right? Because suddenly you have stories within games that are much deeper. And then it's actually not the same no matter how many times you play it, you always find something new. So that's some of the applications of generative AI in games that we are seeing right now.
I do want to talk a bit more about using AI to extend the lifespan of games, but before I do that, I want to bring in Simon because you're using AI, I mean, obviously AI has applications in programming, in content creation, but you're exploring using AI in other ways too. And what if you could talk a bit more about that in what you're doing at Go Gaming?
Yeah, sure. So we had a slightly interesting journey. So early on, I mean, co-founders here, we had this game we were working on, and just like Trung was saying, we wanted to create 25 million characters. And so the way to do that was by AI, because if you did them all by hand, you'd need armies of people for decades to get the job done. And that over time evolved, and now we got to the point where we actually have what we call the world's first community agent. And so her name is Amy. She has her own social channels. She will come into the chat and actually speak to players. She'll do voice communication with them. She'll roast them in the community channels. And now she runs events as well. And so, over the weekend, she'll run a giveaway and players will compete and they'll win prizes by interacting with her. So we saw like a 4x uplift in all our socials the day we added her. And now we're getting to a point where she can coexist in other communities, so other games, for example, and then aggregate all these players to run in all these different events. And so it's been very interesting to see how through AI you can essentially extend the game's lifespan and extend the points of interaction that players have.
And so you've basically, and please correct me if I get this wrong, but you're basically asked this AI agent to kind of act as your community manager.
Yeah, it's a cross between a community manager and a game, because she's also running content and running competitions, and she even has her own mini apps that she's launching, so she can help you do other things aside from play games. So the first one we shipped was one where you can chat with her, you can tell her what you ate, what exercise you've been doing, and she'll track your macros and give you fitness advice as well. So becoming more and more like a lifestyle assistant for our players.
So, Felicia, I want to go back to you. I mean, you talked about kind of the using AI to kind of reset the economics of making a video game. And so, from your position from the venture field, what are you looking for in terms of how studios are thinking about AI, what AI can do to make the process of making games cheaper, more efficient, more expansive? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess for context, we have about 100 different unique portfolio companies making games or gaming adjacent tech all across the globe. All of them, to different degrees, are already leveraging AI in their production pipeline. So it started with art, it's transcending now to engineering. It's changing the whole way that teams can build products. So, in the past, maybe to make a mobile free-to-play game, you'd need team of 15, maybe 9 months, get an MVP, right? Today, you can have 2 vibe coders, meaning they're not technical at all, they're just vibe coding, create a game in, let's say, 6 weeks. So much smaller teams, much faster pace of development. And what that probably means is at some point in gaming, we're gonna have team of 10s be responsible for billion-dollar IPs. That was not really possible before. We still look at for example, one of the biggest titles, I'm not gonna say who, but to run live operations like what Simon was talking about, they had teams of, let's say, 100 people, 200 people, just running live operations. You don't need that overhead now, you don't need that kind of team size. So the costs, the timelines just is drastically reduced.
I want to bring in Trung's views on this too. Again, using AI to extend the lifespan of a game. I mean, every game's a live service game now. Every game has seasons. That means you all have to have skins and new content and everything. Normally, it would take a lot of people to make that stuff. Does AI potentially allow smaller developers to compete in this space too?
It does. It helps a lot. So there's one angle with gaming that I enjoy a lot, because when I play games that are very immersive, I actually enjoy having myself in different kind of social interactions within the game. There's a game that I play a lot called Rise of Kingdoms, in which, right, I actually manage a huge kingdom with different people, different personalities. People have different motivations. And I actually practice like different ways of governance, like being a dictator or being actually a benevolent will with a very democratic like governance system. So that's what I love about playing games like that, and AI actually helps a lot because you can actually create different scenarios, different stories, different kind of interactions without having to like create or like spend hours or thousands of hours of content making in the process. So that significantly improves the replayability of any game. And then with that, right, you can even have AI that plays different part of the game to be right, the social elements that create and nurture all the interactions within those games. Mm-hmm. So that helps a lot because for people who want to spend inside the games, they want to actually feel the social reputation. And that could be done with right, not only other people inside the game, but also by AI, but in a very like diligent way.
Yeah, I want to bring in Simon as well, kind of on this question of does AI kind of help give a leg up to smaller developers, indie developers, versus the giants that make Grand Theft Auto and other giant AAA games? Does AI kind of level the playing field, or?
Yeah, 100%. So what we can do today with a team of, I think today we're about 25 people, is equivalent to what I was seeing in the industry with like, I don't know, I want to say like 8, 9, 10 times that headcount, like just as recently as like 3-4 years ago. And so if that's the state we're at in 2025, like within a couple of years, it's going to be very different. I actually have a very spicy prediction that within the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to see the first like billion-dollar gaming company built by one person. And we already saw like an exit earlier this year of a completely vibe-coded project for, I think it was about $80 million. And those are the ones that are public.
Yeah.
And so I think it's only really a question of time. And so these tools like massively level the playing field.
I just want to add on also, like, if you're a smaller team, whether you're a startup or an indie developer versus a larger corporate, let's just say EA, right? Frankly, their pace of AI adoption is going to be much slower. So 100% levels the playing field. If you can be kind of leading the charge on how you want to use AI and harness that power for game development, you're going to be outpacing them, very quickly.
I mean, awkward question, but if you are a developer or a programmer at one of these larger companies, what should you be doing about AI?
You should be building AI projects in every spare hour you have, because if that company is not going to adopt these tools, then you're going to be looking for a new job soon anyway, and you're going to need those skills.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a round of Southeast Asia questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Trung, I'll start with you. I mean, Sky Mavis was born in Vietnam, based in Vietnam. What's your view of Vietnam as a tech hub? I mean, there's probably some optimism around it. There are probably things could be doing better, but kind of what are your thoughts about Vietnam as a space to grow a tech company?
So we actually made that bet very early on to have Vietnam as a headquarter, having most of our workforce in Vietnam. I would say Southeast Asia in general is a very powerful force in AI adoption and also other technologies because we have young population, also a lot of support from the government. In other countries, that could be a blocker. But in Asian countries and South Asian countries, with the help of the governments, we can actually put things very quickly. So I have seen a lot of companies that want to open office in South Asian countries, and at the same time bring all the new technology, all the product management, all the experience that they have to Vietnam, so that they can actually embrace the workforce here and do new things, but with cheaper of the cost. So I think Vietnam in general is a very fascinating destination for all of you here if you wanted to take a look. Yeah.
And Simon, what's your view of the Southeast Asia video gaming landscape?
I think I'm going to be really candid. I think it's pretty challenged right now. I think there was a lot of excitement pre-pandemic, but post-COVID, like we haven't seen the level of growth and success across the broader ecosystem we would have hoped for. If you look today, Eastern Europe, Turkey, Israel, all these regions and countries are absolutely crushing it in mobile gaming, and yet there's almost nothing comparable coming out of this region. And so that concerns me, because if that pattern carries over into AI, and there's no reason it shouldn't, then like where does that leave us as a region? And so like, I am genuinely quite concerned.
I mean, Felicia, after this, we have a panel on venture capital in Southeast Asia. I mean, again, from your position in this space, do you have thoughts about the venture landscape in this part of the world?
How much time do you have?
3 minutes.
Okay, I'll make it quick. So I think, so as a fund, right, for Play, we invest globally. So 30% of our investments are in Europe, 20% North America. We have some in Southeast Asia and Asia at large as well. We're focused on returning capital as a VC fund to our investors, right? So we have, as a fund, we're one of the top decile returning funds, whether it's IRR or distributions. And I think we work backward from there. What's the exit landscape here? I think that has been a challenge, and one I don't envy for Southeast Asia-focused VCs, because where's the exits? Do you list here? Who's acquiring? As opposed to perhaps for Play, we invest globally. There's a lot more flexibility where the exits come from. Is it, Perplexity or OpenAI or one of the big foundational AI companies that are acquiring left and right now? It's always a possibility. Is it an IPO in a different market? It's a possibility, but I think here, it's, you got to start from, is the capital markets here mature enough to support an exit? And I think it hasn't probably performed the way that most investors wanted it to.
Talk about something else that both Trung and Simon have experience with. I mean, Trung, Sky Mavis was like one of the poster childs for Web 3.0 gaming a few years ago. It kind of was all over the headlines. Then it kind of diminished a bit, kind of faded into the background. What's the Web3 gaming space like now? Is it back? Is AI helping it come back? What's the interest in the Web 3.0 blockchain gaming space?
So frankly speaking, there have been billions of dollars that got into the industry, but there have not been so much to prove. So we haven't seen any successes at the same level of Axie as in 2021. And it's also very hard for us to replicate the same thing that we did back then. So it's just the truth. And in order to basically grow ourselves out of that situation, there's still many things to do. Basically, the industry of Web3 gaming, even though we have been through several years, is not mature yet. And the whole ecosystem we have to build from user acquisition, how to make sure that we channel all of the users into the games, making sure that we have good games that monetize well, and how to really place into this chunk of Web3 instead of just compete with the Web2 games out there that have a lot of good advantage already. So the combination of everything is a challenge we have to overcome in order to make Web3 gaming a success. And it's not an easy path, right? We have been testing a lot of new hypotheses, experiments. How do we really defeat the early narrative of play to earn, transform it to a different thing so that people don't come to games just to earn something back in return. So the whole process is, I would say, very challenging. But it's a fun part of building startups and then tackling a new industry. So, I mean, Simon, I think you can add.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I have a slightly different angle. The last few years have been very difficult, especially from a regulatory perspective. And actually, just in the last few days, we've seen a couple of very important bills passed in the US. So there's one literally called Clarity, which covers digital assets, and that is actually a game changer for anyone building a Web3 game. Because before there was this whole gray area around the legality of it, and it was very difficult to get funding and difficult to get support for different things, and you had to have certain safeguards within the games that made them quite unwieldy and difficult. You had to KYC your players, which was very strange. And so I think that whole landscape improving actually opens up Web3 a lot. And then you have AI added to the mix. And when you have agents don't transact in fiat. They don't have a bank account where they're pinging and waiting for 2-3 days for stuff to clear. they're sending tokens and they have a like native wallet. And so I think the interaction of AI with gaming probably actually gives the whole Web3 sector a big, big boost actually in the next couple of years.
So for this next round of questions, this is for all of you. I do want to address the elephant in the room, which is people get very mad when you talk about AI in video games. And I say people, it's people on social media, it's a sort of a subset of people. But a gaming company talks about using generative AI in their video games, and suddenly there's like a mass social media outcry around that. How do you manage the possibility of that social backlash and then still kind of prove to people that you're in this to make creative, authentic games that either tell good stories or offer good gameplay or have complex systems? How do you manage that relationship? Maybe I'll have Simon go first and then kind of go down the panel.
Yeah, I think like all things, it's better to be just upfront and direct about it. And so the fact that we don't hide it and we completely own it and we write big articles about how we use AI actually diffuses it a lot. A lot of the problem comes when teams lie about it and stuff pops up. And then we show how we're doing it and how it's trained on all our own assets. There's no, quote unquote art theft, and everything is kind of proprietary and it's being used to accelerate and help our developers do kind of cool new things. And so we haven't really had much of a backlash around it. But I'm quite old. I remember the horse armor in Elder Scrolls. Do you guys remember that? So for those of you who don't know, there was a game developer about 25 years ago, 20 years ago that released an item that just changed the look of your horse in the game, and it cost $2. It didn't impact gameplay. There was no other utility other than that. People lost their minds. It was the biggest news story for months and months. There was a lot of rage, and then purchasable items became standard, and no one gets mad anymore. And I think the same is going to happen with AI. This is going to become such a part of the landscape that no one really bats an eyelid.
God, horse armor. I was 15 when that became outrage amongst the internet. Felicia, what do you think about this conversation about authenticity and kind of again showing that the AI's ability to help people create kind of complex narratives, complex games?
Look, I think it's ultimately it's fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's causing people to go in this spiral, right? And I think it's a mindset issue, to be honest. And it is going to be painful. Some jobs will be lost, just like electricity, meant that we don't need people going and lighting street lamps anymore. But I don't think the answer, which oftentimes comes up, is we need to resist AI. That's pointless. They're just going to ensure that you're jobless sooner than later, and that you'll remain unemployable. Because if we accept that AI is the tool in your toolkit, then you want to use it and learn to prompt better, to create more, push the limits of what your creativity can create, using AI. So I think it's reframing mindset around loss aversion and fear of what you don't know. And I think it's great that teams are upfront about it. And I think most of the time what we see with our companies is once the team members themselves, whether they're artists or engineers, start using it, they themselves see oh, that was much better than the old way of doing it. Let me try and do it differently. And the truth is nobody knows what the rules are for how to best use all these tools. Everybody's just figuring out. If you can be at the forefront of that, you will reap the benefits.
Trung, what do you think about this conversation about authenticity, about potential social backlash to AI in games? How are you thinking about this and managing this relationship with stakeholders?
So I tend to think that I'm actually a very extreme game player. Whenever I used to be very skeptical about AI content generation. Whenever I see a bad AI generated characters or assets, then I basically rant about it. But nowadays, with the development of AI models, we can actually see very beautiful AI content and characters and assets inside games, stories too, that really touch the emotions of the players. So I think AI has progressed a lot along the last several years, and it will continue developing even more. And as developers, I think the authenticity comes from the quality that we want to deliver to the players. Nothing replaces the polish that you want to put on your own product. So that's when we work with AI, we always ask what kind of product we want to build. If it's just a half-baked product that we want to get just like out the door as soon as possible, or it's something we want to, right, with the help of AI, put a lot of effort into it so that we can really create quality product at the end?
Well, with that, we will see if Simon's prediction of whether or not we'll see the first billion-dollar game company founded by one person to come true. It'll be interesting to see kind of where in the world it pops up in, whether it's here or in the US or someone else. I want to thank all of our speakers, Trung, Felicia, and Simon, for joining us today and talking us through the video game industry. I was very happy to have you on our stage. Please, everyone, give them a round of applause.